What's going on, everybody? This is next episode of Arena Goat Talk. On this episode, we have three-time Arena Bowl champion and a mentor of mine, one of the best men out there, best players, best coaches. Got Mr. Pat O'Hara. How you doing today, sir?
What's up, EJ? Thanks for having me on finally on Goat Talk. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, trying new stuff, trying to get everybody on. Like the whole thing is kind of like from even coaching nowadays, you kind of seeing that a piece of the story is kind of missing. The older guys, there's a lot of history that's I feel like has been missing, and the whole goal is to kind of get everybody on to kind of tell y'all a story. So guys who are new to this game be like, oh, all right, my game it's kind of tailored after Pat. You know what I mean? Like you don't know you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it kind of deal. Just knowing these guys that put this game together. That's like the whole idea about it.
Yeah, the game it's evolved. You know this, EJ. It's like evolved so much from. I remember. I think the league first started in like 1986, and I was in LA. I was in high school, and I was like, "What is this Arena League?" And LA had a team back then. I can't remember the name of their team.
Got the Avengers before that.
No, it wasn't the Avengers. I'm talking about way back, but I didn't know much about it, and then went through my career in college and really didn't think much about it, and then kind of got drafted and in and out of the NFL for 4 years, and then that kind of ended, and then I got a letter from the Orlando Predators. And I was living in San Diego. Been playing with the Chargers. And I was like, what is this? Oh, this is the Arena League. And they brought me out, and I was like, I'll go out there for a year and hang out for a summer, and it turned into 20 years. It's crazy, man. Back then, like, it could suck you in, It was a good deal. Like, the financials were a little different, and the benefits were a little different. And for me, it just kind of worked. And that 20 years was playing and coaching in it, and I don't regret any of it.
Yeah. So, all right. So, kind of let's kind of start from the beginning. Kind of talk about your upbringing and your thought process as a kid going in and your motivation. Kind of going into your high school and your college experience.
Yeah, I grew up in Santa Monica, California, born downtown LA, and played all sports, and football, basketball, baseball, and really it was all through the Santa Monica, at that time, the boys club. It wasn't the boys and girls club, but the boys club was a huge part of my upbringing. I went there every day, and that's when I started, playing football with them when I was very, very young, and I started playing football. I was like an offensive lineman, then I was a center, and then all of a sudden, I became a quarterback. I could just throw the ball when I was really, really young, and they're like, "You're a quarterback." And so, I played quarterback for the boys club leagues, and ended up going to Santa Monica High School and playing football and baseball. I thought I was a much better baseball player. And as time went on, things kind of dramatically changed once I started playing varsity football. And then all of a sudden I was being highly recruited as a quarterback, and recruited by a lot of schools, and ended up staying local. I went to USC, played football there, and kind of sat behind a Heisman Trophy finalist named Rodney Peete and waited my turn. And, once he left, won the job. But 10 days before my first start of my junior season, in just a scrimmage where you're not even supposed to get hit as a quarterback, and a freshman linebacker dove at my knee. My knee exploded, and I had a MCL, ACL, broken tibia, bone graft from my hip, like really bad. And that just like ended it. And so I missed that whole year. And transferring back then was kind of a big deal. You'd lose a year. If you transferred, it was kind of hard to do. So I just kind of rehabbed my knee in silence. I came back from my senior year, which was my 5th year, and I was at the bottom of the depth chart. I was the holder on PATs and field goals. And, you know, a lot of things happened where I just kept working. And our quarterback at the time, Todd Marinovich, who ended up being a first-round pick after my senior year, who came out early, he wasn't available for pro day. And I spent a lot of time working with our receivers at that time, you know, dealing and getting ready for pro day. And because Todd was kind of gone, he was actually kicked off the team. So I spent a lot of time with our guys working to help them for pro day. And when pro day happened, it was kind of like, I could tell the vibe. You know, I tested really well, but then when I threw, it was kind of the vibe was like, wait a minute, that's the O'Hara kid that got hurt. That was supposed to be the starter. And after that pro day, I started getting calls from different teams to do private workouts for them. And one of them was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I worked out for a guy named James Shaq Harris. He was one of the first black quarterbacks to play in the NFL. He was a scout with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he worked me out for like 2 hours at West LA College in LA. And when we were done, I'll never forget it. He looked at me and he's like, you know what, man? He's like, there's a lot of dudes out there I've looked at. He's like, I'm putting you on the board. I don't care what anybody says. Like, based on what I've seen, he's like, I'm putting you on the board. And I was just happy it went well. And then draft day came, and they used to have 12 rounds. And in the 10th rounds, I got a phone call, and it was Tampa Bay. And they drafted me the 260th pick in the 1991 draft. That's dating me, EJ. Don't get on me about my age. And I was just like, what? And then I got off the phone, and the phone rang again, and it was Shaq Harris. And Shaq goes, hey, man, I put you up there. Don't let me down. Make the team. And I didn't let him down, man. I made the team. And so I was on the practice squad there in Tampa Bay for like the first 11 weeks, and then they activated me as a third-string quarterback. So I spent some time in Tampa. In the off-season, they used to have a thing called the NFL Europe, which eventually became, well, it's NFL Europe, but it used to be called the World Football League.
The World League, yep.
Yeah, and I played in Ohio. They had American teams, and they had European teams. So I played for Ohio. They allocated me there, but they left me unprotected. Back then, before the NFLPA had a new collective bargaining agreement, you could protect certain players and leave the bottom half of your roster as like unrestricted free agents, which was great for me because I went to the World League, and then San Diego offered me a deal to literally come back home to California and go play for the Chargers, and that was pretty cool. So I was there for a year with San Diego as a backup. Went back to San Diego the next year, went through camp, got cut. They drafted Trent Green, who ended up being a great quarterback in the NFL, got cut. And that offseason, the Washington Redskins signed me, went to camp, got cut, and then I was sitting there like, all right, being cut twice. What now? And so I was going to be a firefighter. And then I got a letter in the mail from the Orlando Predators, the Arena Football League. And I was like, what? Oh, this is the Arena Football League. Okay. And they're like, hey, we'll fly you out here. Basically a recruiting trip, you know, at 25, 26 years old. And so I flew out, and I was like, this is pretty cool. And at that time, Orlando Predators was like a perennial, really good team in the NFL, sold out stadiums every weekend. And they had a great player named Barry Wagner, the best that ever played the game. And I was like, yeah, I'll come out here. And I'll play for a summer. And I just fell in love with it. And that led to, man, I played 6 years in Orlando. We won 2 championships. We went to 4 Arena Bowls, won 2 of them. went to the expansion team, Toronto Phantoms, for 2 seasons. When I earned my free agency and we developed a union, not a lot of people remember, we established a very, very good union within our players organization with the AFL that was really good for the players. And I was able to go to Toronto for 2 years with the Toronto Phantoms. That team folded up in Canada, but what a great experience to go live in Canada. And then I was in the same position. I came home, and all of a sudden, I had a couple of Arena Bowls under my belt, had a lot of successful seasons, 8 seasons in the NFL, and phone wasn't really ringing. And then the Tampa Bay Storm called me during training camp of the 2003 season, and they're like, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "I live in Orlando." They're like, "Drive down here." And so I drove down to Tampa, and that began an amazing 2003 season where we ended up winning the Arena Bowl. I was with my coaching mentor, Tim Markham, God rest his soul, and really learned a ton. And he ended up, during my playing time there for 6 seasons, he ended up making me the offensive coordinator, which led to me getting head coaching opportunities in the Arena Football League. And I spent 6 years as a head coach in the Arena Football League with different teams. And then, during the off season, sometimes I would coach high school too. I spent 7 years coaching high school. And that led to me getting an opportunity. This is a short story. Getting an opportunity to interview with the Houston Texans in 2015. And that was a life-changing deal to get an opportunity to kind of bottom level after 6 years of being a head coach in the Arena League to be an offensive assistant under Bill O'Brien. And that was 3 years in Houston, and ended up going with Mike Vrabel, who was our linebacker coach, and then defensive coordinator. He brought me to Tennessee, and I spent 6 more years there. So I was able to get 9 years coaching in the NFL, and very, very blessed and fortunate to do that. And my last season in Tennessee was in 2003, and here we are. That's the short story. There's a lot of in between there, EJ.
Okay. We'll go backwards and lead back up. So when we talk about the AFL and your experiences winning championships, like, I guess, kind of speak on how it felt winning that championship, how it felt as a team, how it felt in general with that experience.
Yeah, my rookie year at 26 years old in the AFL was 1995. That was my first year with Orlando, and it was a really good team. Led by Barry Wagner, who is the GOAT. I don't care what anybody says. And we went to the Arena Bowl. We played against Jay Gruden when he was the quarterback for the Tampa Bay Storm, and we drove down south to Tampa, and they were really, really good team, led by Tim Markham. And we played them in the Arena Bowl, and they beat us. And I broke my foot in the first quarter. I cracked a bone in my foot in the first quarter, played through it. And that's no excuse, but it did happen. It seemed like every time I played against the Tim Markham, Tampa Bay Storm, I got hurt. Like, it was rough. And so lost to Jay in 95, and then we went back in 97. Actually, 98. So a couple of years went by. We didn't get to the Arena Bowl. In 98, we played in the Arena Bowl against the Tampa Bay Storm at their place. And we were like major underdogs. And the night before the Arena Bowl in 98, they'd already beaten us twice during the season. They had a really good team. Jay was not the quarterback at that point. Jay was our head coach in Orlando. He was my head coach. And he was outstanding. He was unbelievable. Like, I felt so confident going to every game when Jay was our head coach. And so in 98, we went down to Tampa. The night before, they had an awards ceremony, which they always did. They give out the MVP of the season, the best organization, all that deal. And I remember I was sitting with Rick Hamilton, who you should probably have on a podcast at some point. Rick Hamilton was a UCF. Yeah, fullback linebacker, UCF, played in the NFL. He's actually my teammate when I was briefly with the Redskins. we were sitting next to each other at the banquet, and Tampa Bay got all the awards. And I was looking around, I was watching like their coaches and their players, and they're all kind of like having a really good time, kind of drinking or whatever. And Rick looked at me, he's like, you know what, man? Let's go. Let's get out of here. And we did. We left early. We went back to the hotel. We went to bed. And we went in there the next day with multiple touchdown underdogs. And we beat them 62 to 31. And Peter Tom Willis had 5 turnovers. And it was just, it was unbelievable win. And that, you always expect to win, but you knew the challenge. That game, I got my tail whooped. I've never taken a beating for 4 quarters like I did in that 1998 Arena Bowl. I mean, their pass rush was crazy. I mean, they had Pig Golf, they had Andre Bowden, they just had dudes. And it was just, I felt like I was peeling myself off the dirt. It was just hold on for dear life. And that win, in the Arena League, regardless of what level of play you're at, when you win a championship, it's all relative. It's you really can't describe it. And that first one was so meaningful. And I remember looking at Barry and the tears just streaming down his face, and his passion. And I've only been there a couple of years, and he'd been in the league for quite a while. And that dude, it was just such an unbelievable feeling. That one really sticks with me. That one and the 2003 championship in Tampa, they both really stick with me.
Okay. So how was it, being on the other side of the war on I-4 in 2003?
It was weird, right? Because now you're I'll never forget when I went down to go play for them. My wife was laughing at me. She's just like, "You're gonna go play for Tampa?" People don't understand, but knew back then, the Tampa Bay Orlando rivalry, and you know this, EJ, was man, it was oil and water. It was the war on I-4, like you said. And so when you go down there and you put on that gold helmet, it was different, but it was also close to home. And so my travels had taken me a lot of different places, but now I'm 90 minutes from work every day. So for me, with having young kids at that time, it was such a blessing. And I was the backup there. I was the backup. And really, Coach Markham made me a player coach, which was unique. And that kind of helped develop me as a coach. And it was kind of unique because I'd go in really early and do my coaching stuff in the coaching office. Then I'm in the locker room getting changed. And I'm just wondering, some of the players might have been looking at me sideways, what's going on with him? And so it was a challenge, but it was beneficial, and I learned a lot. And we got to the Arena Bowl in 2003. That was one of the better teams I've ever played on in that league. And we had a lot of ex-NFL guys, really good team. I'd only thrown 14 passes that season as the player coach type guy going into the Arena Bowl. And so I'm on the sideline. In the first play of the third quarter, John Clay was our quarterback. He was outstanding. He cracked a bone, which we didn't know at the time, but he cracked the wing on your vertebrae in his lower back, the little wing area. He cracked it, and he could not throw. And so here I am, and it was a 1-score game. And so I walked in there. I'm just okay, well, this is why they brought me here. Got a couple Arena Bowls under my belt, but just got to make it happen. And it was magical. It turned into a really good second half. I threw some touchdowns to Lawrence Samuels and ran one in. It was just an amazing win over Arizona. And my guy, Sid Bonner, really good football team. And we were able to win that championship. And it was interesting because, again, very fortunate to have won 3 championships and been in 5 of them. But this one was different. After the game, my teammates and fans, they all came up to me and didn't say hey, great job, whatever. They all just said thank you. They're thank you. And I was thank you. And it kind of made me think about how they viewed me as like this veteran guy. I was like maybe 35, 36 years old towards the end of my career. And they're like, thank you. Like, this is, you came here, you sat on the, as a backup, and you were like a player coach. And then when your number was called, you helped us all win our championship. And so it was meaningful in a different way that I'll never forget to this day. These people just come to me, thank you. I'm like, it was odd. It was beautiful, but it was odd. It wasn't like, man, great job, whatever. There was some of that. But over and over, it's like, man, thank you. And even to this day, sometimes I get texts from guys like Omar Smith, Lawrence Samuels, and they're kind of saying the same thing. And I think it's kind of cool.
You kind of felt like a coach as opposed to a player. Like you say thank you to a coach.
Yeah, it was unique, because I was in a unique position. Like, how many people you come across that you're actually like a player coach, and your players, your teammates, they might look at you weird or whatever, but like that was my role. It's like a player coach, and I really kind of helped on that level, but tried to not be like, it was a tough line to walk, because like you with your teammates in the locker room, you're also in one foot in the office, with the coaches. And so like treading that line, it's a careful balance in maintaining trust. And I'd like to think they trusted me, and with the outcome, I think they do. And so those some really good life lessons for me as far as my coaching career built and kind of took off. Those kind of things helped me.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into the next question, which was your transition from being a player to a coach, and kind of speak on your AFL experiences as a coach and kind of moving through the ranks.
It was interesting because I didn't kind of see it coming. I was just like, after the 2003 season, I came back for 2004 season, player coach, and then a couple of years of at one point I was a starter, was a backup, and then all of a sudden, after the 2000, I retired after 06 season. I just couldn't physically, my knee back from college, like we talked about, it would flare up and swell up, like even at practice, and my knee just didn't work anymore. It was so bad. I was just like, I can't physically do it anymore. So I literally played until I could not do it anymore. The last game I played, we're beating Kansas City really bad, and Coach Markham put me in, and I threw the same pass in the red area 4 downs in a row. And I missed Lawrence Samuels on a throw I could usually make with my eyes closed 4 times in a row. Coach Markham was just like, run it again. He's just laughing at me. Run it again. What's the problem? And he was kind of joking with me and laughing at me as we turned over on downs. And I went to the bench, and I got my car after that game, and I was driving home, and I realized I'm done. And so like that was actually good, because I kind of went out my own terms. Like, I gave everything I had. When I got hurt in college, I was like, I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to play as long as I can. And in my mind, my young mind, I was like, prove everybody wrong, no matter what, And so I played as long as I could. I was 37 years old, and I couldn't do it anymore. But that next year, I was full-time coach with Coach Markham. And a year went by, and then all of a sudden, there was some interest as far as head coaching opportunities. I interviewed with Grand Rapids, Arizona, Los Angeles, and I ended up taking the Los Angeles job in 2008 and got the head coaching job, and it was unbelievable. I was there 4 months, EJ. I remember the date now, 2008. And then all of a sudden, this thing called a recession started happening, and I was like, that's not going to affect the Arena League or me. And then one by one, teams started folding up shop, and that recession hit, and then finally the whole league shut down. And that was hard. We had to pack everything up. Kids were young. My sons were like third, first grade. They were in school in LA. We hadn't sold our house. And so we had to like regroup and get back to Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
I came back here for a few months just trying to figure out like what's next. And then I got a call from Jerry Kurz, who's, I don't know if he's the commissioner or what his role is now with the current AF1, but Jerry was the commissioner of AF2, which was the minor league at that point. They did not fold. They had a financial model that was much less. And they were into their season. He's like, I need you to take over this team. I'm like, what team? He's like, the Tri-Cities Fever. I was like, when do you need me there? He's like, this is Friday. He goes, they're going to lose tomorrow, this Saturday night. He goes, we need you there Monday. I didn't even know where Tri-Cities was. Here I am in Orlando. I'm like, I'll take it. Just tell me where to go, when to be. So they lost. They let go of their coach. They're 0-5. The Tri-Cities, which I thought might be like near, Illinois, Iowa, like somewhere. It was in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
So got on a plane, went to Washington with Tri-Cities Fever, thrown into fire, 0-5. And that was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, and I didn't know it at the time. It was really hard. I took over a team that was 0-5 and had to figure it out. And that was a great lesson. That season went by, and I was going to go back, and then the AFL came back in a restructured format out of bankruptcy, and Jay Gruden actually recommended to the owner of the Predators at the time that he should hire me, because at that time Jay was coaching the UFL, the Tuskers, and really wasn't going to be able to do both. And he actually recommended they hire me, so I became the head coach for the Predators at that time. And that was 2010, so I was there for 2 seasons.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's more after that, but it's
Hey, we can't get into all of it, but kind of, just giving everybody kind of an outline, a brief summary of kind of, your story and kind of, so they'll know you. Like I said, the whole goal of the whole podcast is kind of so the guys nowadays can understand, and some of the guys who helped put this game together and their story, and get some inspiration from it, moving forward.
I was there in Orlando. I was there 2010, 2011. We had a winning record both years. 2010, we were in the semifinal. We missed a field goal with no time left to go to the Arena Bowl. We missed it. Year 2, we actually had a better regular season record. We lost in the first round. 2 days later, they fired me. It was wild. They fired me. Orlando fired me, and literally, I was cleaning out my desk like 10 minutes later, and I got a phone call from New Orleans, and they hired me to be their head coach in New Orleans with the Voodoo. And I was like, yeah. And they had a really rough year. And I spent 3 years with the Voodoo as their head coach. And they ended up holding, didn't renew my contract after 3 years. And then it was like, okay, what now? And I was also doing some broadcasting. I was working on sports movies as far as like a technical advisor, supplementing my income through a lot of years. That's a whole nother story. I was like, what now? And then the drumbeat started happening with the Texans. And, I got a call from Bill O'Brien, and met him at the Senior Bowl, and really interviewed at the Senior Bowl that year leading up to 2015, towards the end of 2014. I went to the Senior Bowl and interviewed with him. Was going to leave. He said, can you stay another day? And then I figured, wow, okay, I'm on the right track here, I think, if he's asking me to stay another day. And spent a lot of time interviewing with him and spending time with them. And then they hired me with the Houston Texans, which, that really changed my life. I feel very blessed that happened. And then when that happened, Went to Houston on the bottom level, not a high paying deal at all. Just, at 45 years old now, after being a head coach for 6 years, you're pouring coffee. And I made sure I was the first one there, last one to leave. I mean, that whole 2015 season, I don't know if the coaches even know there, but like I slept in an NRG stadium every night, like trying to figure it out. Like I would only sleep a few hours a night because like I thought I knew a lot about football until I got there. Then I realized I didn't know anything. And I learned a ton. And I spent 3 years there and kind of grew. And then Mike Vrabel was our linebacker coach, there. And then in 17, he was promoted to defensive coordinator. And then his name started being prominent in the coaching circles to be a head coach. And Vrabes was like, hey, you want an opportunity if I get one of these? And I was like, yep. And sure enough, he got the Tennessee job. He called me and went to Tennessee with him and spent 6 years with him in Tennessee. And it was amazing. We had some years there that were really, really amazing. We have some tough years, but we had some really amazing years. And then when that ended, when Coach Vrabel got fired, we all got let go. Came back to Orlando. And so, I've been started a business, training quarterbacks, loving it. I'm consulting on, football movies and TVs and commercials as an advisor. I'm also working on an app that we released, a quarterback training app. And so I'm doing some different things now. And, EJ, you and I have met a bunch, and I've worked with some of your guys and over at the Draft Academy. And I think that's been rewarding for both of us. And so here we are now, EJ, talking on this podcast and this goat talk you got going on. But I have a funny story about you, man.
All right, what you got?
You can't edit this out.
It ain't live, so we'll see.
I think you already know. So when you played for me, was it 10 or 11?
That was 10 because I was debating on whether, I didn't know what to do at that point in time. Cause, it was done playing, and so I had to figure it out.
I want to tell your audience a little story about you. I know you didn't expect this. So I get the head coaching job in Orlando, and EJ. First of all, if you didn't know, like EJ was a premier pass rusher in the arena football. He started out in AF2 and like broke every sack record in the league at that time, and then he went to the AFL with the Predators. I wasn't his teammate at that point, and continued to do what he did, and he was an exceptional pass rusher. So when I got the head coaching job in 2010 in Orlando, I'm like trying to get some of the old heads to kind of like see if they want to keep playing, and so like EJ's live in Orlando, someone told me, so like I hit him up. So I'm like, EJ, you got to come in, man. Like on your terms. He's a little bit older, like out in the world, and like the money's different now. When we revamped the league, it's not great. I'm like, EJ, just come play for me, man. He's like, yeah, I don't know. And he's like, I'll tell you what. I'm like, well, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm trying to coach, and I'm trying to teach and coach in high school. And I'm like, well, cool. Well, where are you trying to coach, and what are you trying to do? He's like, I'm trying to coach wherever in the area. If basically, long story short, EJ told me, if you can find me a coaching and teaching job in high school, I will come play for you. I said, okay, all right. So I'm like, tell me, like, just so when I call around, tell me, like, what type of teacher you are, like, whatever. He's like, well, I'm an art major, and I'll be an art teacher. And I'm like, what? This hellified pass rushing machine, like beast. He's like, I majored in art, and like I studied to be an art teacher. And I'm like, okay. So here's where it gets crazy. I'm like, how in the hell am I gonna find this guy an art job and / football coaching job. The first person I called was Don Stark. Don Stark was the head coach at University High School at this point. Don's a friend of mine, outstanding coach. He's coaching high school in Georgia right now.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Donnie, I got this guy. All right, EJ Bird. I told him all about him. Like, are you looking for a defensive coach? He's like, I am. I'm looking to fill my staff. I'm like, well, he's a teacher too. He's a certified teacher. He's like, oh, great. He's like, I just got to check on like what's available with certified teachers. Let me get back to you. Don Stark calls me back. He's like, I don't think I'm going to be able to hire EJ. I go, why? He goes, the only job available, for football / teacher is art teacher. Think about that. I'm like, it's meant to be. Like, are you kidding me? I go, Don, the guy's an art major. He's looking for an art job. He just started laughing. So I called EJ. I'm like, yep, got you a job, man. What now? He's like, you're kidding me. It didn't take long, right?
It was the next day. I ain't believe it. It was literally the next day. I was like, nah. I was like, nah.
You're like, this guy's magic. This guy's either magic or he's full of it.
When I threw that out there, I was like, because I ain't played. It's been 2 years. League went down. I'm sitting there like, okay, what's the next move? I was doing real estate, but the real estate market kind of crashed, and I'm like, all right, I gotta do something. So maybe teaching, give me the same flexibility, give me some flexibility to try to make some money, but I got consistent money going on. And when you did that, I wasn't really serious about playing. I was like, he ain't gonna get me no job, And you called the next day, I was like, nah, now I got to hold on my end of the bargain.
Yeah, you never thought in a million years.
Not at all. Especially saying art. Like, I was like, nah, he ain't gonna be able to get that. It literally that thing was literally the next day.
Man, I was like, man, look at me, like I did that. Like, oh, not that. I was just total dumb luck. You know what I
mean? and I remember interviewing with that principal, and he was so caught off guard that I was an art guy and a football guy. He basically was like, you got the job, because I was messing up the interview. I'm over here stuttering, and I didn't know. I never thought in a million years I'd be a teacher. So in that interview, I'm over here messing up. He's like, man, don't worry about it. You already got the job.
which is really cool, because I followed EJ after that, after the year of Predators, and the cool thing that your audience may or may not know is that you stayed coaching in high school football and developed as a coach, and teaching, and really using being a teacher really to promote and advance your career as a coach. And the more you advanced as a coach, the more opportunities came. And so, like, I always look back on like that moment where I was like called Don Stark, like, hey man, can you hire this guy? And I'm glad that it worked out, because that led you to be eventually a head coach in the Arena League, and that is just so cool, and you earned it. You know what
I mean? You earned it. Yeah, I appreciate it. That was definitely a crazy story, because again, I just threw that out there. I was like, I don't know about playing, but if you get me a job, you give me an interview, you got me. Oh, I got you a job. What? It felt like I didn't even finish my statement. Like,
yeah.
I got a job. That's how quick that thing felt.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Yeah, that was the thing. I definitely remember that. I still talk to Don every once in a blue moon now. So I definitely appreciate that, because that opened up a lot of doors for me, and from coaching and teaching and all that, and using teaching to try to understand how to coach guys. That whole experience is definitely a big influence on me to this day.
Good deal, man.
But yeah, so we always kind of like close out giving advice to players nowadays, or guys nowadays that's kind of at a crossroads, or they're looking to play. So giving them tips on this is what you should be doing, or think about doing this. Like, I guess give some advice to the guys that are at a crossroads about playing and looking to do something.
I always say the same thing. And I know the financials in the indoor leagues are tough. I get it. It didn't always used to be that way, but it is now, and it probably is not going to change. If you can, I really am a firm believer in staying active, meaning if you don't have a team to play for, it may not be the league you want. It may not be the UFL. It may not be Canada. It may not be the NFL. Or it may not be the indoor league you want to play for, because there's a million of them, right? It didn't used to be. But there's the IFL, NAL, the AF1, and then there's a bunch of other leagues. So, like, you may want to play in one specific league. I think it's important to stay active because, once you lose a year of playing, it can be tough. And I know, if I go play indoor football, am I going to get looked at? To be honest, you may not. But if you don't, you're definitely not. It's tough. And the challenge, and you know this, EJ, the challenge is like, okay, am I at a point where I can balance having a job that works for me, where I can still go play football and stay active? And that's a question for each individual. For me, at my situation when I came to Orlando, I had already had a couple of years in the NFL. I was single. I had no kids. It was an opportunity to go have some fun and play. And then circumstances changed. But that was an opportunity for me to do that. There was a point where it came to where I was like, man, is this, after I got married and had kids, like, is this really going to work for me now? And I was very fortunate where that transitioned into coaching. The one thing I can say is what I did do is during the latter part of my career as a player in the Arena League, in the off season, I coached high school. Spent 7 seasons coaching in high school in the off season because they run opposite. Indoor league runs opposite the outdoor league. Mm-hmm. And that was hard financially because especially in Florida, coaches don't make a lot of money. But I substitute taught, and I coached high school. I did some broadcasting on the side. I was able to work on as a technical advisor in some movies. I was fortunate to be able to do those things to kind of get me by, but I wasn't getting rich. But if I hadn't done all those things and kind of the stars lining up to get me an opportunity to eventually get back to the NFL as a coach, it wouldn't happen. Now, there's no guarantees, but it's an individual decision. I think if you love it and you feel like you believe that you have an opportunity to take this to a different level, then you've got to stay active. Sitting out a year or two is tough. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, regardless of what league you're in. So those are tough calls, EJ. You know that. You've been down there.
Yep. Talking to guys nowadays, everyone, when you're talking to, recruiting wise, you're talking to a guy who's fresh out of college. Everybody wants to go to the NFL. So, they kind of shun the idea of going indoors. And then after they're out, out of football for a year, then they're ready to entertain, arena football. And, from talking to guys, every single year, there's a fresh crop of guys coming out. So, your window grows shorter and shorter every single year.
It does. I mean, a fresh crop of guys with youth and the salary caps involved. They're always trying to find cheaper, younger players to put on their roster in the NFL. Every year, in my 9 years in the NFL, that was a conversation behind closed doors. That's what you want to do. If you can replace somebody, that's just brutal truth, EJ. It's we can replace, if they can replace somebody cheaper and younger, and it's pretty close, they're going to do it. And I saw a lot of great players end up getting cut or their careers end, and people are upset. Why did this happen? Whatever. And then happens to all of us. It happens to all of us, and it's always this cheaper and younger. And that can be a tough pill to swallow, but like it's the National Football League, and it's not for long, man. If you're blessed to be in it for any amount of time, it is a true honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be able to be in it. And I was blessed to have 9 years as a coach in it. I have 2 credited seasons as a player. I was in and out of it for 4, but I have 2 credited seasons, so 11 years. And I feel blessed, like that's a miracle. And so, but if you're not active and you're not continually working, then you may not get an opportunity, but you're definitely not going to get an opportunity if you're not active and working towards it.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so appreciate having you on. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But again, appreciate the talks, and like I said, you're like a mentor and all that to me. So, I'll always be in touch, just trying to learn whatever I can.
I appreciate it, EJ. Thank you for having him on. I'm so glad that you started this. Because there's a lot of people that are worth talking to, as you know already, and I've watched some of your broadcasts or podcasts, and like there's a lot of great stories, and there's a lot of really, even guys that ended up going to the NFL from the Arena League. That should be talked about, so people are inspired by that. And thanks for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure, EJ. You're my guy. And
all right.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you again. Appreciate having you on, and have a good night. We'll be in touch.
All right, brother.